I've been a vivid dreamer all my life. As a child, I once argued with my mom about a place I was certain we had visited together. I pointed to the picture of Tree of Life and insisted, when can we go back there? She laughed and shook her head, telling me we'd never been. But I dug my heels in. I wasn't imagining it. I remembered it. To me, those dreams were real, so real that waking life felt like the falsehood. That picture of the Tree of Life hung on the basement wall of our house, and I used to stare at it for hours, not just looking, but remembering, feeling. I could feel the wheat threading through my fingers, the wind brushing against my face. It wasn't just memory, it was sensation. That place lived inside me as much as any waking moment ever had. Looking back now, I see those visions for what they were: God's early whispers, breadcrumbs scattered across my childhood, preparing me for a story I didn't yet know I'd live. And then came the dream, the one that planted itself in my spirit more than 20 years ago, a dream that foreshadowed the struggles ahead but also promised the outcome. This is Chapter 2, The Furnace or the Fountain. I was sitting alone in the enveloping darkness of a cave, not scared or anxious, just sitting. Silently, my papa appeared before me, his presence bringing a comforting glow. His smile, a beacon of fond memories, illuminated more than just the cave. It lit up the cherished moments we'd shared and revealed a mining cart sitting just a few feet away that was ready and waiting. We climbed in together, the track stretching endlessly into the abyss. Papa gave the cart a gentle push, and it began to roll forward with a steady clatter. The walls whispered echoes of our movement, and the light from Papa's aura revealed flecks of glittering minerals embedded in the stone. The air was cool, earthy, and ancient. And somehow I inherently knew we weren't just moving forward, we were ascending. I could feel it in the gravity, the subtle lift of my body, the pull not downward but upward, as though the cave itself was carrying us higher with every turn of the wheels. The cart picked up speed, and soon the cave opened into a vast chamber. My eyes widened. Carved into the very heart of the earth was a library, shelves upon shelves brimming with books. The air buzzed with a quiet hum, like the very walls were alive with the stories they held. These weren't ordinary books. Their spines shimmered like gemstones, their pages whispering even when untouched. I understood without being told this was a library of souls, of lives already lived and lessons already learned. Each book was a record of someone's becoming, their failures, their victories, their prayers, their promises. Some glowed brighter than others, pulsing like lanterns. Those were the ones still being written, still alive, their endings not yet sealed. Others shone steadily, whole and complete. Together they formed a constellation of human experience, an archive of God's unfolding stories through his children. Papa's laughter filled the cavern, warm and familiar. Welcome, he said, to the archive of adventures, the repository of recollections. He walked with purpose to a nearby shelf and plucked a book as though it had been waiting for him. Lightly brushing the cover, he handed it to me. This is where we begin, he said. I held the book in my hands, its golden title gleaming, but before I could open it, the cart jolted back into motion. Suddenly, Papa and I were riding through darkness again, the wheels echoing against the walls. This time there was no sound but the steady clatter of the cart. No words, no laughter, just silence that stretched for what felt like hours. Then at last, a faint glow appeared ahead. My heart leapt, and I turned to Papa, ready to share my excitement, still clutching my book to my chest. But he was already watching me, smiling, eyes bright as though he had been waiting all along just to see my reaction. And then, in a rush of light, we burst from the tunnel into a field so radiant it nearly stole my breath. The grass was lush and green, the air fresh and alive. All around me were people, faces I didn't recognize yet somehow knew, cheering for me. Not out of pity, not out of relief, but with joy. They weren't worried about me, they weren't afraid I was lost. They had been waiting for me, ready to celebrate. When I landed in the grass, Papa was gone, but the scene before me stamped itself into my soul. The cheering, the welcome, the sense of being expected, it was all too magical to forget. It was a glimpse of heaven. I didn't see it then, not at first, but looking back, I realized how clearly the dream mirrored the resurrection. I had this dream 22 years ago, long before I had a relationship with God, and at the time, it was simply a beautiful, inexplicable visitation. Only later, after God had moved into my life and my eyes were opened, did the symbolism settle like a second skin. The cave as a tomb, the cart as the slow turning of an unseen hand, the sudden burst of field and welcome as the life the risen Christ gives. The image of being carried up out of the dark into a cheering green place reads now like the gospel, played in cymbals. The living God sees us in the dark before he wakes us. He knows the books before we write the final chapters. The fact that the dream came so early in my life before I even knew to name God has become one of the clearest proofs to me that he was at work long before I was ready to see him. About 3 weeks after that dream, I found out I was pregnant with my beautiful, amazing blessing of a daughter. While storms and strife were certainly ahead of me, God placed my first major blessing right into my arms, proof that even before the battles began, he was already sowing life into the story he was writing for me. 3 years later, he gave me my son. Another blessing, another promise, another reminder that even in the midst of what I would face, his goodness was already woven into my story. And then, for years, the dreams stopped. I don't know if it was the weight of responsibility, the stress, the worry, or the sheer exhaustion of surviving, but the visions went silent. What had once been a river of images and whispers became a barren landscape. Nights became blank, dreamless, or filled only with fragments I couldn't remember upon waking. It felt like losing a language I hadn't been fluent in, like God had gone quiet. But now I can see. Maybe he hadn't gone silent at all. Maybe my own heart had grown too noisy to hear him. And then came the breaking point, leaving my marriage. As soon as I stepped out of that life, it was like something in me cracked open again. My dream world revved back to life with startling clarity. God came busting through my subconscious, vivid and undeniable. The images were so sharp, the messages so insistent, that I had to start documenting them immediately. At first, I thought they were just symbolic, a kind of spiritual shorthand for truths God wanted me to see. But then came clear instruction, which was followed by a day where I stood in my waking life, watching a dream unfold in real time that I'd had months earlier. Word for word, step for step, exactly as I had already seen it in the night. And that's when I knew these weren't just dreams, they were revelations. Before I get into the story of the dream that unfolded before my eyes, I have to pause here, because the only reason it was confirmed in waking life was that I had been listening. I was in the right place at the right time because of the new communication methods God had given me. If I hadn't have followed those nudges, if I hadn't obeyed those signals, the dream would have remained just a dream. Because right alongside the dreams, other senses began to wake up, quiet at first, then unmistakable. A pressure at my temples before certain knowing arrived, a soft electric buzz at the crown of my head when truth landed, subtle ringing in one ear when a message felt urgent. I would think of someone and they would text me. I'd write a scene at night and watch some piece of it echo in the morning. I didn't conjure any of it, it felt given, like God was widening my bandwidth. I started tracking it all like the data analyst that I am. Timestamps, sensations, patterns, what most people call the clairs. Clear seeing, clear feeling, clear knowing, and how they showed up in my body. I wasn't trying to be mystical, I was trying to be faithful. I had to actually ask for his guidance, confirmation, communication, and direction. So how could I turn away when these new sensations arrived so loud and obvious against the quiet that I'd began living in? It felt like God answering out loud to a whispered request. You asked, so here it comes. Specifically, I had made a simple ask. If you want something to stand out to me, please show it to me 3 times. It wasn't a theological trick, just a practical plea for confirmation in a life that had trained me to doubt every blessing. He delivered in a way that still makes me laugh. The first major sign, the name Gabriel, appeared to me 3 times in a single day. A new neighbor introduced himself as Gabriel. My son brought a friend over, Gabriel. Later that afternoon, a YouTube ad rolled by with a fake check made out to Gabriel. I had no real Bible knowledge at that point, but I went and read every Gabriel reference I could find. That single day felt like a divine tap on the shoulder. Yes, you heard me. The truth was, I had no idea what I was asking for in full. I wanted help. I didn't know I had requested a full reboot of my inner operating system. So when the pings came, those odd electric nudges and perfectly timed confirmations, I followed. Not because I was chasing the strange, but because they lined up with my prayer. Each little wink, quote unquote, a verse, a lyric, a billboard, an uncanny coincidence felt like a confirmation breadcrumb, small, precise, and impossible to ignore. Turning away from them would have felt like ignoring an answer I had begged for. That's when I made a rule. Test, then act. Ask for 3 confirmations, write them down, wait for peace, and then proceed. The gifts weren't an invitation to show off, they were a tool for obedience, and obedience became the work that made revelation useful, not spectacle, but stewardship. This next dream is the reason I kept going. Every time the fatigue threatened to swallow me, every time the voices told me I was being foolish or overly sentimental, God would come in the night and rebase me. When reality felt flimsy and my courage almost ran out, those dreams reset the coordinates of my heart, reminding me who I was, who held me, and why the work mattered. They were not optional pep talks, they were the steadying beam that kept me from collapsing under doubt. I am watching, awake and dreaming at once, while he stands before me. In his arms is a toddler version of me, small, stubborn, my hair a wild, tangled mess, sleeping against his chest, like the whole of my childhood has been folded and protected there. Then he speaks. "You are listening in my house," he says. "I gave you the breath you still in, and the beat that drums beneath your ribs. I built the sun and set the stars to keep their watch. I planted the trees and taught the rivers how to sing. Do not pretend you are a stranger here. You sleep in the bed I made for you. You eat from the table I lay before you. You walk in the world I painted, and yet you tell me what I can and cannot do in my own house? Child, I am father, I am mother, I am healer and harbor. I will be whatever I must be to reach the child who will not otherwise hear. I will not limit myself to places you deem as holy. I will not be boxed into your expectations. I will speak in whispers and dreams. I will use broken things and mend them. I will use a hand, a laugh, a sudden light. Do not tell me how to show up. Listen to me now. You will not place boundaries on the God who puts breath in you. I will move as needed to bring you home." He hugs the sleeping child, a vision of me, and tucks her closer with a look that says, "I have kept you, and I will keep you now. Will you open your ears?" Then his voice softened, almost like he was leaning in closer, speaking directly to the deepest place within me. "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with them, and they with me." He finishes with a line I made my mantra the moment the dream faded. "Don't put limits on what my God can do for me." Then he walked away with me still asleep in his arms. Before we move on, I need to express something. Perspective really does change everything. If I look at these dreams with my old eyes, the ones stuck in logic and control, they'd feel like nonsense, leftover noise from a tired brain. But when I soften, when I let myself believe even for a moment that God might be speaking in ways I didn't expect, everything shifts. I've learned it's not about whether God is speaking, because he always is. It's about whether I'm willing to see it, to lean in, to let the possibility be real. And that's the hard part. My instinct is to doubt, to second guess, to explain it all away. But if I do that, I'll miss him. I'll miss the very thing I ask him for, guidance. So I tried to stay open, to let the dreams come even when I didn't understand them, to sit with them long enough to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they were messages meant to guide me. There's another piece to this that I didn't expect, the work of letting go of ego, the loud, clutching part of me that is used to insist on control, on making meaning on my terms, defending my story, proving I was right. When I surrendered even that little tyrant, something loosened. Neuroscience talks about the brain's habit loops and the networks that keep us replaying the same dramas. Spiritual practice, prayer, and focused attention, those things quiet the noise and open space for new patterns to form. The vibration of my life changed. My attention tuned to a different frequency, one that hears whispers as clearly as a cowbell. The more I whispered, the clearer it became. And then it happened, the moment that changed everything. One dream stepped out of the shadows of my mind and planted itself right in front of me in the real world. That was when I knew these weren't just stories in my sleep. This was God showing me the life that he had planned for me. In the dream, I was under a pavilion, bright streamers, balloons tied to posts, and a little red fire truck parked like a child's prize beneath the eaves. To my left, two people were carrying a sheet of glass across the pavement. I watched them walk, and the glass cracked in two with a sudden, violent, ringing shatter that cut through the air. Wolves began to howl around me, raw, wild, and uncanny. The sound threaded through the dream like a warning bell. Then I saw two people I knew in some old, familiar way. My attention swung back to the pavilion, and there he stood in the shadows, a figure I'd been searching for in a dozen nighttime scenes. I ran to him, heart punching my ribs, because in the dream I already knew he was the one. Up close, his hair was thick and curly. He looked human and ordinary at first. But as I neared him, he shed that outer skin like a costume. The man became nothing but shadow, an outline where features should be, and yet the one thing that remained was his smile. It was enormous, enlarged almost beyond reason, luminous against the dark. All I could say was, "It's you, isn't it? It's you." And he was nodding his head up and down, smiling even bigger, excitedly confirming, "Yes, it's me, it's me." The dream closed on me, hugging him, squeezing him like someone who had found home. What hit me most then was not the mystery of the shadow man, but my lack of fear. I didn't hesitate. I didn't shrink back. I ran straight into shadow without flinching, because something inside me trusted him before my brain could give me instructions otherwise. Months later, I stood in that exact place, only it was daylight and concrete instead of the soft unreality of sleep. I'd moved to a new town and found myself at a zoo that I'd never visited. There was a pavilion with a birthday party unfolding underneath, balloons, laughter, a tiny red fire truck set out as a prop. To my left, a snow cone truck was busy breaking up blocks of ice on the pavement, and that mundane, specific image, people smashing ice on the sidewalk, hit me with an electric, bone-deep familiarity. Behind me, the wolves, caged, being fed and loud, filled the air with the same raw animal noise that had threaded my dream. I watched the scene unfold like someone watching a film I'd once written in my sleep. Everything matched down to the ridiculous specificity of the props and the soundscape. The man from the dream wasn't under the pavilion that day. He never was. I didn't go looking for him either. Somehow I already knew he wouldn't be there. But standing there, feeling the same electricity in my chest, I realized the dream hadn't been a riddle to solve so much as a map to trust. I rushed back home to my notebook of dreams and tore into the pages, rereading, reanalyzing, this time taking meanings more literally than symbolically. The day at the zoo made me stop treating the night's images as nice little metaphors and start treating them like a script the universe kept handing me. And well, now I have a story to tell, my tapestry of dreams woven together, stitched into the life I'm living. In the practice of the stitching, it has evolved into a collection of dream work analysis for waking guidance, Bible theory, and the literal psychic nudges that colored my vision. The bear dreams came like a refrain, the same terrifying note played over and over until I learned the melody by heart. I'm leaning with everything I have against the front door, palms slick, knees trembling. From the other side of the glass comes a violence I'd have never imagined in daylight. A bear, huge and terrible, snarling and chomping, battering the door like it means to tear the whole world open. The sound of it, fist of fur thudding the wood, makes the house tremble. I shove my weight into the jam, repeating something like a prayer and a promise. Not today, not today. My child body in the dream crouches small and raw and terrified. I run, crawl, and hide in the pantry, because that's what you do when monsters test the thresholds of what you call safe. I hold my breath and wait to hear the scream. But then, strangest thing, my mother squeals in the house, and not a scream of fear, a squeal of delight. I think she's scared, she'll cry, but she's laughing, she's playing? From the pantry, I stand there watching and feel something shift. Is the bear a monster, or is everyone else missing something I don't yet have words for? The child me peeks from the shadows and sees her there, calm on the outside, laughing like a hostess trying to keep a party from unraveling. Yet her eyes betray the strain. She's postured like a peacekeeper, as if taming a wild animal into obedience so the crowd won't be in danger. The bear tears through the place, violent and unwelcome, and my mother pretends it is nothing, that she is not afraid, but I see it, the tension, the fear just beneath her smile. Then the bear rears back, raising one massive paw as if to strike her across the face. Time seems to split open, and before the blow can land, a saber-toothed tiger explodes from the shadows. Muscles like coiled fire, fangs flashing, it slams into the bear with a snarl, wrestling it to the ground. The clash is primal, snapping, gnashing, the air thick with the sound of battle. Only then do I realize the tiger hadn't just appeared. He had been there all along, hidden in the house, waiting. Long before the bear ever crashed in, the tiger's presence filled the shadows, silent, patient, and unseen. The bear had no clue it had walked into a trap that it couldn't escape. My mother doesn't hesitate. She runs towards me, scoops me up into her arms, and bolts for the door. Behind us, the bear thrashes, trying to break free, but the tiger is relentless, claws sunk deep, holding the beast in a grip that will not let go. Its fury is not chaos, it is protection. The saber-toothed tiger fights for us. And then I see it, flame licking at the edges of the dream. Behind us, sparks skitter across the walls, the glow swelling and spreading, catching like tinder ready to consume everything. Not just heat, but presence, a warning at the edges. The dream resets again. The bear crashes through a window, glass exploding like ice shrapnel. The whole room freezes, air sucked tight, body stiff. And then, impossibly, a little girl toddles forward. Barely more than a baby, she lifts her small hand, innocent and afraid. "Touch the bear's nose?" she chirps like she's asking to pet a puppy. Beside me, a man's voice cuts the silent, casual, almost amused. "Yeah, honey, go ahead. Touch the bear's nose." My heart seizes. Terror claws at my throat. I know if I move, the bear will lunge. If I stay, the bear will still lunge. There is no winning here. Time stretches thin as paper. The child reaches up, finger brushing the animal's muzzle, and the bear rips into her. The sound tears the air apart. I can't breathe. I can't move. Instinct takes over. We flee. I follow the man out the front door, down into the yard, the chaos of bodies spilling into trucks, engines roaring like panic itself. I climb into the passenger seat, my chest heaving. People pile into the back, faces ghost white. Someone shouts over the din, "Where's the little girl?" I swallow hard, voice breaking, thick with grief. She didn't make it. And then, without flinching, the man beside me, the one who had urged her forward, says flatly, "She was a goner anyway." The words strike like a blade. My sorrow snaps into fury. I whip toward him, my voice cutting through the chaos like thunder. "No, don't you dare. She wasn't a goner, not until you told her to go. You led her to the bear, and you killed her with your selfishness." Every face in the truck turns. My words are not quiet. They're sharp, loud, and authoritative. I will not let his callousness be mistaken for truth. Rage ignites in me like the fire still clawing at the edges of the dream. You lied to protect yourself. You will not twist this. Her blood is on your hands. The truck jolts forward, but the silence inside is absolute. His cowardice has been named. His lie has been crushed under the weight of my refusal to let it stand. And then, another reset. We escape the house for the last time and pile into a truck, but my relief is a thin thing. Is this just another reset? As we run, I glance back and the house itself is engulfed in flames, fire curling out the window like red tongues, smoke pouring into the night sky. The air crackles with heat, popping wood, and the sharp smell of everything burning that once tried to shelter us. The roar of it presses against my ears as we sprint, and my body knows this house will not stand again. I scramble into the truck, lungs raw, and glance behind me. There, calm as if it belongs, sits the bear in the back seat, dead eyes, blank and terrible. The driver tells me not to panic, like that will help, as if calm can be ordered into being. We drive on, the road lit and flickers by the blaze still eating through the house we'd just fled, and then, as if obeying some strange internal law, the bear slides out the window and lumbers back toward the burning. It doesn't roar, it doesn't fight, it simply leaves, swallowed by the fire, returning to the very ruin it had created, like the flames were its home all along. I find my hands trembling, tears come, full and hot. "Please," I sob to the driver, clutching the dash. "Please help him. Don't let it end like that. Let him see me happy. Let him see me whole. Let him find whatever he needs to find." The driver, calm and steady, steering through the smoke-streaked night, doesn't answer at first. Instead, he reaches into the console and presses a folded scrap of paper into my palm. "Read this later," he says. I glance down to see letters bold, bright, and unmistakable. Deuteronomy 6:7-9. Even in the dream, I feel the weight of it, though I don't yet know why. Then he speaks plainly. "This," he says, "this is the consequence of choices made when a life runs its household without God at the center, when the altar is wealth and numbness rather than worship. Karma," he says softly, "is the natural return of the life you build." He built a house of things, not of grace. The flame is the honest end of that architecture. He lets the words sit between us like a covenant, then explains, "This is what I asked my children to do, to make my ways the rhythm of life, to let my word mark their homes and gates. He refused that rhythm. He ran his household without me. His gates read like a ledger, wealth, toys, and comfort. He wrote his security into things that cannot save. When a life is built like that, fire reveals its true foundation." I press, my voice raw. "Can it unfold another way? Let him stay to watch me move on, to see me be happy and abundant. Can't that be justice?" The driver's hands are steady on the wheel. His voice softens even further. "Justice is mine, daughter. You gave me your life. You placed the burden in my hands. Do not try to take it back or block what is mine to deliver. Trust me. I ask again, smaller now, can I at least pray that he finds you, that he comes to know you? God's voice is steady, not cruel. He answers, but not the way that I expect. Yes, the driver says. Of course, but I encourage you to pray for yourself right now because you cannot help others while your own faith lies in tatters at your feet. He will not seek me. He cannot see me through the veil of money, greed, and materialism that clouds his life. You left with nothing but a camping chair and houseplants because I asked you to. You obeyed. You let go of everything you had worked so hard for so that you can hold my hand. And here you sit, riding in the passenger seat while I drive you to your new life. Trust me and let the bear go. I press my forehead into my hands and whisper, so I just let him go? Trust me, he says simply. Move forward. Let the bear find whatever path he finds. You follow the one I set before you. Outside the window, the night is a ribbon of smoke and orange. The truck hums on and my sobs soften. God shows me more, not with words this time, but by shifting the lens. Suddenly, I wasn't in the passenger seat. I was above, seeing my life through his eyes. God shifted the scene, dissolving the truck around us and sketching the image of a bedroom, a grotesque exaggeration of my old life. I lay in a bed buried under piles of things, clothes, papers, objects, junk stacked chest high. The floor was the same, clutter on every square. It wasn't a room anymore, it was a tomb built out of stuff. And in the mounds, something moved. At first it was a shape, just a suggestion of motion. Then God showed me the headboard, a narrow, zippered seam I'd never noticed in waking life. It slid open to reveal stacks of cash tucked into a hidden compartment. The bills were bundled, neat, and shockingly specific. $84,520. The number didn't feel random. It arrived to me whole, precise, the kind of detail that made me sit up in the dark and hold my breath. In that moment I knew this was not ordinary dream nonsense. This was a confirmation, a psychic marker that the vision wasn't invented by anxious sleep, but supplied by something outside my small mind. Then the hand revealed itself. Not flesh, not human. Black, slender, and long-fingered, demonic and delicate at once. It did not claw or snatch. It beckoned. It moved like a slow invitation curling through the piles as if it belonged there. And I stared. Not from fear, an odd iron hunger settled in me. I felt that pull in my chest, an ache of wanting that hand to touch me, as if that touch could finally fill the hollow the stuff had been trying to fill. I fixated on it the way someone fixates on a single bright star in a cloudy sky. Everything else blurred, only that hand existed. But God showed me what it really was. That hand was him. The same rhythm I had lived for years. He would beckon me close, hold me just long enough to appease himself, then shove me away. And still I begged, still I craved, still I trained my eyes on him, hoping this time he would keep me longer, love me deeply, see me fully. But it never came. Instead, each touch left me emptier than the last, like it siphoned something vital from me. It was never what I wanted, never what I needed, only the ache of denial. The starvation of intimacy, the worship of scraps that hollowed me out further every single time. The contrast God laid bare was cruelly clear. The cash hidden like a secret altar, the demonic hand offering the same worship in a darker currency, and me, eyes glued, wanting the witching prize. That exact dollar amount stayed with me when I woke, a precise echo that later, when cross-checked, felt impossible to chalk up to coincidence. For the first time, I understood why he stripped me down to nothing, why he asked me to let go of what I thought I'd built. It wasn't punishment, it was freedom. The room wasn't evil, but it was evidence, a shrine to survival, a trap built out of stuff, and a demon that was more than willing to keep me busy so I wouldn't notice I was actually starving. The vision dissolved, and I was back in the truck, the road unspooling in front of us, God's hand steady on the wheel, mine empty in my lap. His voice slid through the silence. This is why I ask you to leave with nothing. Not to punish you, to free your hands. Because if your hands are full of junk, Lacey, how can you hold mine? The line landed like a chisel. I leaned my forehead against the glass, tears drying on my cheeks, realizing he hadn't just rescued me from the bear. He had rescued me from myself, from the hollow hungers, from the worship of things that could never feed me. He had pulled me out of the fire I couldn't admit I was standing in. And then months later, when I wasn't expecting it, another dream came. It didn't arrive stitched to the others, not in sequence or in rhythm, but more like an afterthought, a stray note that at first seemed out of place until I realized it was still part of the same song. It's winter, and we're at the bottom of the mountain, frost on our breaths as I begin hiking up a mountain with friends. I lag in the back of the pack because I am not ready for this climb. A bear explodes from the trees and chases me down the trail. I can't outrun it, so I throw my pack away like a decoy and sprint for a camper. It's safe, or at least safer. I watch from the window as it rips through my things, demolishing everything I had tucked away. Food, comfort, the small ordinary things that make a life. My friends keep walking, oblivious. I am left in shambles. Then the scene softens into a wheat field. A figure, God, walks beside me but stays just beyond clear view, hidden in the overgrowth. He asks me, "Lacey, how do you like surviving on your own?" I answer honestly, "Well, I've gotten better at it." He persists, "Yeah, but how do you like it?" I respond, "Well, it's gotten easier. It's not as difficult as it used to be." He repeats his question simply, "But how do you like it?" I finally relent. "Well, God, it sucks if I'm being honest. I hate it." He smiles, not unkindly, then disappears behind tall blades of wheat. When I turn to see where he went, the bear is at my face, closer than it should be. I freeze. Panic begins to braid into the edges of everything. A voice, God's, comes from far away and says, "Don't run. Stare at it. Walk slowly back toward me. Go to the river. When you get into the water, the fish will distract it, and you just walk out on the other side." I do what he says. I begin to move with my eyes fixed on the bear. Its slow steps match mine as I inch backward. I reach the water. It chases the fish, forgetting me. I step out again, and people who must have been watching cheer at my calm composure under pressure. I begin searching for God because I want to thank him. I want to touch the hand that guided me. He appears across the wheat field carrying my canvas wedding photos, those heavy frame proofs of a life that once seemed like a plan. The stalks around us are golden and ripe, swaying like they've been waiting for this exact moment. God calls this work decaying bad seeds, letting the husks of whatever should have been fall back into the soil so that new life can take root. The wheat isn't just backdrop, it's a parable. My losses weren't waste, they were compost for the next season. "I thought you might want to burn these," he says, like it's the most natural thing in the world. My reply is pure excitement. "Heck yeah, I do." He laughs and says, "But not here," gesturing to his left. Together, we walk to the top of a hill where he had built me a stone fire pit, solid and unmoving, laid with his own hands. "I thought you could use a nice, peaceful place," he says. After the last photo curls and turns to ash, he turns to me and from the warmth of the flames takes a small thing, a ball of light no bigger than my fist. The outside of it glows bright and steady, but at its center there is a bold, slow shimmer of red like a heart beating. He hands it to me and says, "Lacey, this is yours. Give it your time and attention. Hold it and it will grow. But when it gets large enough, you have to release it." I cradle the orb like something fragile and holy. For what feels like months, though time in dreams folds oddly, I sit on that hill and tend to it. Jesus sits at my side. I feed it my attention, my breath, my quiet work. It answers me. The light doubles in size, then triples, then swells until it's too large for my hands. I cling to it, desperate, tears brimming. It is all I have, the thing I have loved without reserve. It begins to lift. I try to hold it down, wrapping my legs around it, pressing my palms until they sting. "Please don't go," I whisper to the thing I made. "I worked so hard on you. Please, please don't go." The orb rises slow and terrible until it hovers 30 feet above my head. I gasp, a ragged, hopeful sound, and watch as the light rearranges itself. It changes shape, warps, becoming something else entirely. The glow solidifies into a rectangular wooden box that tumbles from the sky and smashes to earth. The lid pops open and the contents spill out. A riot of Chicago Cubs merchandise, caps, pennants, shirts, a mocking ordinary bounty. I stumble forward, kneel, and gather the pieces with hands that trembled. "This isn't what I worked so hard to have," I say, hollow and confused. A man appears nearby, interested, smiling the kind of smile that wants another's disappointment. "That's really amazing. If you don't want it, I'll take it," he offers, stepping closer, greedy for what I've been given. No, I snap, wounded but abrupt. It's mine. I clutch the box to me as if protecting a child. When he reaches, I fling the box up into the air in one small, furious arc. It shifts mid-flight. A bed. Another thing, then something else, and each time I send it back with a single adamant refusal. The form keeps changing, and I keep refusing them. None of them fit. At some point, distracted for just a breath, just a moment, I fell to watch the sky. When I look back, a man stands before me. He is the one I have been dreaming of, the face that has been threaded through the reels, the steady warmth behind so many of these scenes. Without thinking, I throw my arms around him and hold on like wind will take him away. He does not balk. He lets me cling. I ask him, "Did you just drop out of the sky?" He laughs, his voice a low rumble in my ear. "Yeah," he murmurs into my hair. "Pretty much." My fingers dig in. I'm afraid if I let go, he will change shape and be gone like everything else. Jesus hovers close by, watching. His hand is light on my shoulder. "You don't have to cling to him, Lacey," he says, soft as the ember wind. "He is what you want. You didn't want the other stuff, so I took it away. You can let go." To make it holy proof, the man, the one I've loved in my dreams, looks me in the eye and says plainly, "I'm not going anywhere." The words pass into me like a full breath. Slow and trembling, I unpeel from his arms. The fear ebbs just a hair. The insistence of my clutching loosens. For the first time in a long time, I let something stay without trying to force it to be different. That was the revelation. Every false form I'd clung to, the scraps of affection, the counterfeit intimacies, the hollow worship of being chosen for a moment, but not cherished for a lifetime, those had to go. The glowing orb that shifted into Cubsgare, into bed, into anything but what I wanted, was God showing me, this is what you keep holding on to when you won't let me decide what's meant for you. So he grew something different in me first. He had me regrow my love for myself, so vast, so radiant, that any false return of it felt like a ripoff. The manipulations that once tricked me now rang hollow, obvious, almost laughable. What used to hook me now looked like a swindle. My spirit could finally tell the difference because real love had finally been planted inside me. God stripped away the lies until the only true thing remained: love. Not the cheap imitation I used to beg for, not the half-hearted attention I thought would fill me, but the kind of love that stays, the kind of love God himself authors, a love story that begins where surrender makes room. That's what I had been holding all along. That's what he had wanted to give me. Weeks after the glowing orb slipped from my hands and reshaped into the man I clung to, another dream came, softer but sharper at the same time. I stood before a garden gate, iron and vine twisted, tall enough to blot out the horizon. Behind it I could hear laughter, children's voices, running feet, the steady hum of a family at peace. My heart ached so fiercely I thought it might split. I pressed my forehead against the gate and whispered, "God, can I start over? Could you really heal me and give me another chance at this? Could you plant a family in ground I thought was barren?" The silence stretched until it nearly broke me, and then the scoffing began. Not just from him, the man who once fed on my hope, but from a crowd of voices rising all around me. Some sneered and some laughed. "You? A family? Don't be ridiculous." Others whispered, pity sharp as glass, "It's too late for her." Their judgment poured over me like cold water, each word trying to freeze me where I stood. My chest hollowed with the weight of it, shame pressing like stones. I pressed my hands harder to the iron, and voice shaking but steady, I added what I hadn't dared to say aloud until that moment. "God, everything I built was on sand. If I could start again, would you help me build on rock this time? Not only for me, but for the children I love. Let them see what a home held by you looks like. Give me a steady foundation so that they can know that it's possible. Make our story a safe place for them, not another lesson in loss." The jeers swelled into a bruise of noise, but this time something different moved in me, a small, stubborn hope that felt like a prayer catching flame. And then from the shadows just past the gate, he appeared, the man I had clung to so tightly, the one who simply stayed. He stepped forward calm and steady, his presence carrying no urgency, no mockery. He placed one hand on the iron bars and looked at me as if nothing about me frightened him. His eyes carried time in them, more years, more weathering, more life. It was the kind of gaze that might have made the world whisper about differences, about what should and shouldn't be. And yet, under God's gaze, none of that seemed taboo at all. It felt like completion, like a circle finally closing where it had always meant to. The jeers still echoed, but weaker now, like old lies unraveling. And then God's voice, steady as the earth itself, cut through the noise. Love doesn't consult calendars. Love consults me. I make all things new. The gate creaked, slow and deliberate, as if even heaven wanted to make sure I heard it open. Laughter spilled out, children's voices light and wild, rushing over me like warm water. And there he was, steady on the other side, his hand reaching toward mine. But we both hesitated. My fingers hovering over his, trembling with doubt. The whispers behind me were still too loud, still insisting this was ridiculous, unearned, and impossible. My voice cracked into a prayer. Are you sure this is for me, God? He, too, hesitated, though for him it wasn't shame, but the weight of years of difference of the world's wagging tongues. He looked heavenward and asked his own question in another way. Isn't this too unlikely? Too much? And then God laughed. Not mockery, but a belly-deep laugh that shook the gate itself. Really? You didn't question neglect when it wrapped itself around you like a gift. You didn't question the drama, the manipulation, or the backstabbing. You just accepted them like hand-me-downs. But when I hand you the perfect dance partner, complete with a choreographed routine on a stage I built with my own hands, you ask, are you sure? As he said it, the ground beneath us shifted. The whispers faded to the rafters of an open-air theater, the stars themselves burning like spotlights. A wooden stage stretched wide before us, polished and gleaming as though heaven had been rehearsing this moment since the beginning. In the center, a path of light formed, leading directly from my feet to his. I laughed through the tears because it was so ridiculous and so holy at once. He smiled too, the tension easing from his shoulders, as if he finally believed this was no longer his to resist. The absurdity turned into clarity. God had staged this, literally. This time, when his hand stretched forward, I didn't hesitate. I placed mine in his. Together we stepped through the gate, onto the stage, and into the dance already choreographed by heaven. Behind us, children's laughter spilled out like light, rushing over me, warm and wild. What the crowd mocked, God had blessed. What the world dismissed, God had already planted. What startled me the most when I woke wasn't the voices mocking me in the dream, it was my own. The thought circled sharp. What kind of request was that? It felt absurd, even laughable. A family rebuilt? Another chance at something I had already tried and failed? I had never asked for that before, never even wanted to. But as I sat with it, I realized the desire hadn't come from me. It had been planted, watered slowly, quietly by God himself. Over the last year, he has shown me flashes in my sleep, babies in my arms, children running at my feet, a home that pulsed with life and laughter. At the time, I dismissed them as odd, even cruel little visions, but now I see what he was doing. God was reshaping me not only to heal what was broken, but to desire what I had once thought impossible. He was asking me to trust him with something I had never dared to want, to believe that he, the same God who resurrects, can also replant, that he doesn't just restore what was lost, sometimes he gives the desire itself as the seed, then waters it with his own promise until you can't help but long for it. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37:4. I used to think that meant God would grant the things I already wanted. Now I see it differently. He writes new desires into us, holy ones that we could never imagine asking for, and then he fulfills them in his timing. So yes, my request was ridiculous by human measure, but in God's world, ridiculous is often the beginning of redemption. Before I could get there, I knew what I had to do. I was baptized for the first time in my life. I don't know how most people feel when they're baptized, but for me, it felt like pressing Control-Alt-Delete on my whole personality. When I came up from the water, I felt like a blank canvas. No more anger, no more resentment, no more worries. It was as if God had stripped me bare of everything I thought I had been. It also exhausted me. I went straight home and collapsed into sleep like God himself had whispered, "Rest up. The seed of light I've placed in you is only beginning to grow." But even as new light stirred within me, the shadows still weren't finished teaching. Because as these scenes piled up, a bitter little truth began to thread through them, like a red ribbon through a seam. The bear kept wearing the same mannerisms I'd learned to recognize in waking life. It prowled the doorway like someone who thinks they own the threshold. It sat calmly in the back seat of my Escape as if entitlement were a right. It encouraged danger and shrugged when the cost was someone else's blood. It ripped through my things not because it needed them, but because destruction satisfied it. Dream logic doesn't usually bother with metaphors. It hands you a creature and expects you to figure out what it takes when it bites. I started to notice the echoes, the way the bear's violence felt familiar, as if I'd felt that weight pressing at the edges of my life 1,000 times. The dream showed me a pattern of presence and harm that I'd been too busy to name in the daylight. Not a man, not a name, just a posture, intrusion, humiliation, and the slow theft of safety. Once I let myself read the beast as more than a random nightmare, the dreams stopped being mere terror. They became a lesson plan, an initiation in miniature. Name the pattern, step out of its orbit, follow the voice that tells you where to go. This is shadow work in practice. You point a lantern at the thing that scares you. You see its edges, you learn its rhythm, and you refuse to obey it. That refusal is transmutation, turning the poison into medicine, the wound into a doorway. And maybe that's why the dream of the glowing orb was planted right alongside the bear. God was showing me that the only way to survive predators is to cultivate a love so real, so luminous that all counterfeits feel like swindles. He had me grow love, first for him, then for myself, until it was so big that scraps and manipulations felt insulting by comparison. Every false turn of affection became plain as day. Hollow imitations couldn't hold a candle to the light he was expanding within me. The orb was proof that what he plants in us is meant to grow large enough to illuminate every shadow. And when it comes to this crack in my heart, the longing for family, the ache for laughter and noise and home, I know God will heal it. Maybe through grandchildren, maybe through adoption, maybe through a spiritual calling that lets me help children who need love the way that I once did. However it looks, my faith is absolute. God doesn't plant a hunger that he won't fulfill. While I wait on his promise, he doesn't waste the waiting. He uses it to retrain my heart and my habits. Because there's a small practical science to this too. When you consistently choose a different response, your brain begins to rewire. Neural pathways that once fed fear start to weaken while new circuits for safety, discernment, and courage grow stronger. Combine that with intention, prayer, attention, and ritual, and you get the alchemy of healing. Old patterns combust and new ones condense. Call it neuroplasticity or call it grace. In my life, it looked like both. After I rushed home from the zoo that day, back to my notebook, I began to see the dreams through a different lens. God has been teaching me all along that he is an efficient God. Two things can be true at the same time. A single image can hold both warning and promise. One scene can be both death and resurrection. One stone, one giant, but the echoes of that stone can topple more than I ever imagined. Nothing is wasted. Every detail carries more than one meaning, stitched with precision into the fabric of his design. When he drops something into your spirit, it isn't just for one moment. It's layered, multidimensional, designed to echo across seasons of your life. So when taking another look, what I found was yet another layer stitched through every bear dream, the demon of self-sacrifice. It hid itself in different disguises, but the pattern was there if I dared to name it. The child in the pantry sacrificed her intuition, trusting the wrong voices and ignoring the fire in her gut. I sacrificed my supplies to the bear, throwing away everything I had in desperation just to survive another moment. The man in the looping house sacrificed the little girl, offering her innocence to the beast so he could escape, then twisting the story to protect his own reputation. Every scene showed me how sacrifice can be both a holy offering and a hellish counterfeit. On one side of the fence, sacrifice is what God asks when he calls us to lay something down for love, to surrender ego, to burn the relics, to walk into the river and come out new. That kind of sacrifice purifies. It clears the ground so he can build something steady, something no beast can shake. But on the other side, sacrifice becomes demonic when it feeds destruction, when innocence is offered up to protect pride, when intuition is silenced to keep peace, when people are thrown to wolves just so someone else can look clean. That kind of sacrifice leaves people chained, empty, and devoured. And in that illumination, the deeper truth becomes undeniable. The bear was never just a beast and a nightmare. It was the face of abuse itself, intrusion and violence dressed in fur. The man who urged the girl toward danger wasn't just one person. He symbolized what happens when there is no shield, no true guardian, no one to protect innocence. That child's step toward the bear was the story of so many, walking straight into harm because no one stood in the way. But the driver in the truck, calm and steady, was Jesus. He was the one who corrected the lies, who placed truth like scripture in my hand, who named justice rightly and reminded me it was never mine to carry. The contrast in those roles taught me something I could not ignore. Abuse thrives where protection is absent, but truth always rises where Christ enters the scene. Even the cabin itself carried meaning. It wasn't just a stage for the violence, it was symbolic of family structures built on the wrong values. A house framed by pride, secrecy, or material wealth instead of God's rhythm will always collapse into ruin. The Deuteronomy command that our homes be marked by His ways was already echoing through the dream. If His word isn't the foundation, the walls won't stand when the fire comes. In the last bear dream, when God brought me to that stone fire pit He had built with His own hands, I realized He was restoring the balance. He was showing me what true sacrifice looks like, not giving myself away to the beast, not trading pieces of my soul for survival, but handing Him the ashes of my old life so He could give me back stability, fire, and peace. And here's a harsh truth. God is going to purify you either way. Through fire or through water. He will burn away what cannot stay or wash what no longer belongs. One method sears, the other cleanses, but both make you new. The choice isn't whether you'll be purified, but how willing you are to surrender to His process. Resist, and it may feel like fire. Yield, and it may feel like water. Either way, His goal is the same, to restore you until you're unshakable. To put it simply, do you want the furnace or the fountain?